It's the most wonderful time of the year with jingle bells and menorahs. Families come together and spread cheer like it's butter. Unfortunately, this is a true crime podcast, so it won't be as joyous as the normal holiday season. With a collection of different cases, we will be discussing some of the horrors that have come around in Christmas past. This is Case 41, Christmas Chaos. 'Tis the season for murder.
Hello and welcome back to the Abyss Pod. I'm Brittany.
And I'm Hallie.
And we hope that you are having a joyous holiday season and you're getting to spend time with your family and you're safe and all is well.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and light the menorah.
Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. You can find us on pretty much any podcasting platform. Give us that 5-star rating on Apple if you're feeling generous.
It's the holiday season. Let's give a little.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter for all the updates on cases that we've talked about and some that we haven't. Head over to our website, theabysspod.com, for pictures, show notes, and all of our sources for all the cases if you want to dig a little bit deeper. We also have a contact form on our website where you can get in touch with us. You can send us case suggestions or thoughts that you have, any questions you might have on the cases we've covered, anything like that. And if you want to help us out even more, we do have a Patreon where you can donate a few bucks a month just to help us out so we can put more time and resources into this podcast and bring you even more.
So get your cup of hot cocoa, put your feet up by the fire, and let's dive into the abyss. The first case we are going to dive into today is about a woman named Michelle O'Dowd. Michelle was 67 years old and was a kind lady. She resided in Jacksonville, Florida, and was loved by many. Family stated that she wouldn't even hurt a fly. She knew a young woman named Patty Michelle White, who was 40 years old, and they had gotten to know each other through family. Patty had dated one of Michelle's nephews in the past and had been considered a family friend since the breakup. Patty had a hard time keeping down a job and getting her life together, and Michelle took sympathy on her. She allowed Patty to move in with her for a little while, and Michelle really supported her by paying her to clean houses or babysit for other people in the family. She would also complete little jobs here and there for people who were related to Michelle in order to save a few bucks. As time went on, Patty and Michelle ended up becoming friends. Michelle even gave Patty access to her credit cards and other information so she could purchase groceries for them at the store. Michelle allowed her to reside in the home for free for an entire month. Eventually, Patty moved out, though, and went back to York, South Carolina, where her family lived. In December 2011, Patty got an idea. An awful idea. She got a terrible, awful idea. She was going to drive all the way to Jacksonville, Florida, to rob the lady who helped her so much, Michelle O'Dowd. When she got to Florida, something must have gone off the rails and messed up Patty's plans. Some type of physical altercation occurred, and then Patty beat and strangled 67-year-old Michelle until she died. Neighbors would later recall hearing someone screaming and quote-unquote wailing, but no one called the police. This is just classic bystander effect. Patty then staged a robbery and took Michelle's debit and credit card. She then hid Michelle's body in a ghastly manner that would be etched into the minds of whoever found her, and then she just fled. The following morning, people became concerned that Michelle had not shown up for work, so they contacted her twin brother, Phil Axett, to check on her. Around 9:10 a.m., Phil arrived at his sister's home, and his life was changed. Even though they were in a gated community, Michelle's door was wide open. The home had no signs of forced entry, but it was clearly ransacked with a sign of struggle. Chairs and tables had been tipped over, and there was an empty vodka bottle present, which was out of the ordinary for Michelle. Michelle's dog was still in the home, and her car had not been stolen. And after completely taking in the scene in front of him, Phil noticed that there was a foot sticking out from underneath a pile of Christmas presents. He removed the presents and saw his twin sister there dead, and her face was covered with a bloody towel. Phil Axett was quoted on CBS News saying, quote, "There is nothing worse than when you walk inside and find your own sister brutally murdered over a stupid debit card," end quote. Police were able to track down Patty pretty quickly. She was found back in South Carolina after using 2 ATMs with the stolen cards. She had tried to disguise herself on the cameras, but Michelle's family was able to properly identify her anyways. And in October 2013, Patty Michelle White was convicted and sentenced to 45 years in prison for the brutal murder of Michelle O'Dowd.
Next, we're going to talk about the disappearance of Melissa Brannen. Melissa was born April 12, 1984, to Michael and Tammy Brannen. The couple soon divorced, and Michael moved to Texas while Melissa stayed with Tammy in Virginia. The two lived in Woodside Apartments in Lorton, Virginia. In 1989, Tammy was 28 years old and was working really hard to provide for her daughter. During the week, she was an accountant, and on the weekends, she worked at a jewelry store as a clerk. On December 3rd, 1989, the Woodside apartment complex had a Christmas party for its residents. Tammy was really tired from working so hard and originally wanted to skip the party, but Melissa was so excited about it that Tammy soon conceded and decided they would attend. There were a lot of people at this party, well over 100, mostly other residents. Melissa was shy and stuck close to her mother, but had a great time. While most people were reveling in the festive season, some partygoers did notice someone a little bit off. There was a man making crude comments to some of the women at the party and was even showing a little too much attention to little Melissa. This man was Caleb Hughes, and he was the groundskeeper for Woodside Apartments. Despite this uncomfortable part of the night, Melissa and Tammy had a nice evening, and when Tammy said it was time to go, she had Melissa go and grab their coats. As they were walking out, Melissa asked if she could run back in and grab some extra potato chips for the walk home, and Tammy told her to go grab a few. Tammy waited there for Melissa to come outside so they could head home, but she didn't come back out of the building. Tammy immediately went back into the party thinking maybe Melissa had gotten distracted by a friend or snacks, but she couldn't find Melissa anywhere. She started to yell for Melissa and frantically searched the room for her daughter, but she had vanished. So Tammy decided to call the police. They responded quickly, and all told, 300 people participated in the search for Melissa. They searched the building and noticed something ominous. In the back of the room where the party was held, there was a utility closet, and in that closet there was a large open window. The window was away from other partygoers, and it faced the woods, making it the perfect place to slip out unnoticed. Investigators found one set of adult footprints leading away from the window, which suggested someone may have carried Melissa out. In January of the following year, Tammy gave an interview. She said, quote, "I've stopped living in a way. I lie awake night after night. I fall asleep thinking tomorrow is going to be the day they find Melissa. Then I wake up in the morning thanking God that at least the worst didn't happen. At least they didn't find Melissa dead." End quote. Police obviously became suspicious of foul play right off the bat. If she had simply wandered off, she would likely have been found right away. They briefly thought maybe Melissa's father had abducted her in a custody disagreement, but Michael was in Texas and he was super distraught over the disappearance of his daughter. With this theory out of the way, police set their sights on the man that had made so many party attendees uncomfortable, Caleb Hughes. Police talked to people that had uncomfortable encounters with Caleb at the party. They also looked into his lengthy criminal history. They called Caleb's apartment, but his wife Carol answered and said her husband was not home yet and she did not know where he was. Eventually, investigators decided to go to the apartment, and they arrived at 5:30 a.m. This is when things started going downhill for Caleb. Evidence immediately started mounting up. Carol said Caleb had come home much later than normal and had immediately put his clothes in the wash. Police checked the washing machine and found his clothes from the party, but stranger than that, he had also thrown his belt and shoes in there along with a knife sheath. Upon examining the shoes, investigators found that the soles of the shoes had been scraped and cut. Forensic investigators found the presence of human proteins that could be blood on the shoes, so it was thought that Caleb had tried to cut out the parts of the shoes that had blood stains. Caleb emphatically said that he had not spoken to Melissa that night, but other partygoers and even Tammy herself saw him approach her. Tammy witnessed Caleb comment to Melissa that she was pretty, and Melissa shyly ignored him. While being interviewed, investigators told Caleb they thought he knew a lot more than what he was saying, to which he responded to, quote, "prove it," end quote. Caleb was put through a polygraph test, which he failed on questions asking if he had anything to do with Melissa disappearing. Carol let police take her car, which Caleb had been using, to search for evidence. Carol had been suspicious of Caleb's behavior, so she kept careful track of the mileage on the car's odometer. She told police on this night there was unexplained mileage on the car. Caleb's explanation for this was he took the long way home and had stopped to buy beer shortly before arriving home around 12:30. The problem was that in Virginia, stores can't sell alcohol after midnight. Caleb couldn't really justify the trip other than that. In the car, forensic investigators found two types of fibers. The first were blue and red fibers, and the second were found to be rabbit fur that had been dyed black. Tammy had been wearing a black rabbit fur coat the night of the party, so this connected the two, especially since Melissa had collected the coats shortly before vanishing. The other fibers were more difficult to confirm for investigators. They knew Melissa was wearing a red and blue outfit with a navy sweater with Big Bird on it and a red plaid skirt. Melissa's grandmother had purchased the outfit but couldn't remember where she had gotten it, so it was hard to find. This was super frustrating to the forensic investigator, so much so that he vented about it to his wife. Fortunately, his wife recalled seeing this exact outfit featured in a JCPenney catalog and was able to go grab it and show it to her husband. Tammy confirmed that it was the same outfit, and police tried to find the set to purchase, but it was sold out. Only a limited number had been made, and they'd been snatched up quickly. Luckily, they found someone that had purchased it and due to a sizing issue had never used it. So police finally had the outfit to test the fibers against. When the fibers were compared, it was a perfect match. This was made even more conclusive because the dye of this particular sweater was only used once and it had been created specifically for this outfit, so it was not a commonly used dye. The presence of these fibers in Caleb's vehicle showed that Melissa's pink nylon jacket had been removed, indicating to police that there had been a sexual assault. Investigators also used luminol on the car to see if there was blood. They found blood on the steering wheel, foot pedal, and driver's side floor mat, but unfortunately, testing was inconclusive. During the course of the investigation, Tammy ran into Caleb at a mall and pleaded with him to tell her where her daughter was, even saying she wouldn't tell anyone if he just told her the truth. Caleb's response was, quote, "I'm in too much trouble, I can't talk to you," end quote, before he ran off. Police in the community organized searches, but nothing was found. In February of 1990, Tammy received a call from a man claiming that he had Melissa, and for $75,000 he would release her. They had only vague information about Melissa and her disappearance, but Tammy called the FBI, and they tapped her phone immediately. Tammy and her family knew that this was a long shot, and police told everyone not to get their hopes up. The next day, the man called back and told her instructions of where to drop the money. She put together $74,000 in a package and gave it to a courier as instructed. The police followed the courier straight to the dorms of Howard University, and there they apprehended two men responsible for this cruel plot. Anthony Gerard McRae, age 24, and Emmett Muriel Greer, III, age 20. And both were arrested. It was obvious pretty quickly that they had nothing to do with the actual case, and they were just charged for the hoax and got 7 and 8 years respectively. Even in 1990, you had to be pretty stupid to think that that was going to work. I'm sure they thought they were super clever with the courier, but it was just an asinine and incredibly cruel plot to do to a grieving mother, and I don't know how they thought they were going to get away with that. Police were pretty set on Caleb Hughes being their man, and every piece of evidence was stacked against him. They theorized that Caleb had kidnapped and killed Melissa and stashed her body somewhere before returning home that night. Virginia law did not allow for murder charges to be filed when there was both no body and no known location of the murder. If police could have identified where the murder occurred, murder charges could have been pushed without the body, but they had to settle for, quote, kidnapping with the intent to defile, end quote. Based on the forensic evidence, Caleb Hughes was found guilty on March 8, 1991, and he was sentenced to 50 years in prison. He was released on August 2nd, 2019, after serving only 28 years of his sentence. Melissa Brannen has never been found. She would be 36 years old now. She had blonde hair and blue eyes. She was last seen wearing a navy blue sweater with a Big Bird on it and a red plaid skirt. She was also wearing a bright pink parka, and she had a burn scar on her right forearm. If you have any information on her whereabouts or her disappearance, we will have contact information for authorities on our website. This case was featured on Forensic Files and an FBI Files episode as well, so if you want more of a look at it, those were good episodes to check out.
The third case we'll be discussing today was committed by a man named Alexis Valdez. Alexis was 18 years old when he moved in with his aunt and her boyfriend, Silvestre Diaz Hernandez, who was 41 years old. Diaz Hernandez had a 19-year-old daughter who thought the world of him. She was mentioned saying that he was such a kind-hearted, generous man. Alexis's aunt agreed that he could stay with them as long as he attended school and was contributing to the living arrangements. Things were okay for a bit, but then Alexis stopped working. It was unclear during our research if he got fired or if he just blatantly quit, but he definitely was unemployed. Alexis argued with his aunt and her boyfriend a lot about this and his lack of responsibility, his unemployment, but this just caused a lot of tension, and he was eventually asked to leave the home for not abiding to the rules that they set when he initially moved in. They did not remove him immediately, though. They told him that he needed to start prepping and finding somewhere else that he needed to go. This really infuriated Alexis, and on Christmas Eve in 2013, Alexis's aunt went to a Christmas party and Diaz Hernandez went to visit family. This left Alexis at the house by himself so he could sulk and ruminate about the frustrations that he was having. To make matters worse, he started drinking the adults' alcohol, and when Diaz Hernandez returned home, he noticed that Alexis had drunk all of the beer. Kind of annoyed at this point and wanting something to have as a drink, Diaz Hernandez decided to go to the store and pick up some more stuff, and Alexis joined him. Before leaving, Alexis hid a hammer by the door and prepped to carry out a horrendous plan. After returning from the store, now in the early hours of Christmas morning, Alexis picked up the hammer in the entryway and attacked Diaz Hernandez. He beat him in the head multiple times, unfazed by the gruesome murder he had just committed. He started blasting music and covered up all of the windows. Alexis then decapitated Diaz Hernandez and mutilated his body. He removed his eyes with a finger and then cut off his nose, ears, mouth, arm, and hand with a knife and a saw. This is just unnecessary. He had no reason or purpose for mutilating the corpse. He did it just because he wanted to. Like, do you think about cutting off the nose? Like, it just seems so targeted and not really purposeful in any sort of way.
Definitely a little excessive.
Alexis then put the head and some other parts of the body on his aunt's bed as a Christmas present. Yeah, you heard that right. He put it on her bed as a Christmas present. The assistant state's attorney, Kingsley Sawyer, was later mentioned on CBS Chicago saying, quote, "If his aunt had come home and seen the victim's body, then he would have killed her as well," end quote. After Alexis was done, he called 911 to report the dead body. When the 911 operator asked if Alexis had tried CPR, he responded by laughing and commenting that the head wasn't attached to the body. Police rushed over and found Alexis sitting on the porch. He was covered in blood. The police obviously proceeded with caution and asked Alexis if he was okay and what was going on. According to DNA Info, he said, quote, "Shouldn't you arrest me before you ask me questions? Because I just killed a man and he's in the basement," end quote. Alexis then took an iPad that he was holding in his hand and just shattered it on the ground. Once police entered the home, they found Silvestre Diaz Hernandez in the basement and also parts of him on the bed. They also collected a knife as evidence from the scene. An autopsy was conducted and the report said that Diaz Hernandez died from multiple blunt and sharp force injuries. Alexis Valdez pled guilty to first-degree murder and was sentenced to 33 years in prison at the age of 19.
The next case we're covering is that of the Ortega family massacre, also referred to as the Covina Massacre. This story might ring a little bit familiar to you if you watched season 2 of American Horror Story, as this was theorized to be part of the inspiration used for that season. It all started with a man named Bruce Jeffrey Pardo. Bruce was an engineer, but was kind of a deadbeat otherwise. He didn't have the best work ethic, and he was not great at relationships or keeping things together. He started seeing a woman from work, and in 1988, they were engaged. Bruce was down on his luck financially, so his fiancée agreed to pay for the entire wedding and the honeymoon. When June 17, 1989, the day of the wedding, rolled around, his fiancée got a shock when Bruce straight up just didn't show up. Not only that, but he had wiped out their bank account as well. Needless to say, it did not go over well and the relationship ended. Years later, Bruce met another woman named Ilana, and the couple moved in together, and they eventually had a baby. On January 8, 2001, Bruce was supposed to be watching his 13-month-old son. Unfortunately, Bruce was not watching Michael closely, and the toddler fell in the pool and almost drowned, sustaining a severe brain injury and leaving him a paraplegic. Ilana said Bruce was incredibly guilty, but he soon stopped visiting his son at the hospital and stopped contributing to the financial support. Ilana had to eventually sue him when the medical bills reached over $300,000. Bruce had abandoned his son completely after his neglect caused the injury in the first place. So Bruce Pardo was not a stand-up guy. Despite this, in 2004, Bruce met Sylvia Ortega, and the two were married in January of 2006. I guess Bruce decided to actually show up to this one because the wedding went through, but Bruce was pretty much awful from the beginning. Money was a huge source of contention for the couple. Bruce refused to split finances and made Sylvia take care of herself and her children with her own money without him contributing to the household at all. The final straw was when Bruce's own mother told Sylvia about the son Bruce had abandoned and the circumstances surrounding it. As if that wasn't bad enough, Sylvia found out that Bruce still claimed Michael as a dependent on his taxes, despite not seeing him or helping in his care at all. Divorce proceedings commenced, and in June of 2008, the court decided Bruce was to pay $1,700 a month in alimony and an additional $10,000. Bruce was furious with this, and he claimed Sylvia was living with her parents rent-free and just spent the money on lavish luxuries like cars and vacations. In July of that year, Bruce was fired from his job for billing false hours. Alimony was suspended at that point because Bruce had no income. December 24th, 2008 was a happy day for the Ortegas. The whole family was there for a festive Christmas party. Christmas was a huge deal to this family, and they always had fun parties to celebrate. As the party rolled on, there was a knock at the door. 8-year-old Katrina, Sylvia's niece, answered it and was met with Bruce Pardo in a Santa suit holding a present. She immediately became excited seeing Santa, but that excitement was short-lived as Bruce pulled out a gun and shot Katrina in the face. It was at this point the night suddenly turned into chaos. In his costume, Bruce was hiding 2 9mm handguns, and in the gift-wrapped package, he brought 2 more 9mm handguns as well as a homemade flamethrower. After the initial shot, Bruce charged through the house and opened fire on the terrified family. People scattered, some hiding behind furniture, some escaping out windows or trying to get away. Letitia, Sylvia's sister, and Katrina's mother, was able to call 911, and we have the audio of that here that we'll play for you so you can kind of get a feel for what the night was like.
He's shooting. What's your address? Ma'am, I understand. I need to know your address.
When he shot, I heard the shots, and there were like poppers, and I wasn't sure what it was, so everyone started panicking and running, so we all dove under the dining room. Some of us dove, some of us left. I don't know. My daughter's been shot. She was shot in the face on the side, and she's bleeding.
I know. I let the officers know. The officers are making sure it's safe for the paramedics.
I need a bandage, please. Please come immediately.
Who's in your house?
Immediately. I don't know who else is alive.
I know, ma'am. Just stay on the phone with me, okay?
My whole family, there's 30 people, 25 people.
I know.
Neighbors took in fleeing people and also called 911. After Bruce was done shooting, he took out the flamethrower and sprayed gasoline all over the home before setting it on fire and fleeing. Police arrived at the scene 3 minutes after the call was placed and found the flames had reached 50 feet in the air. The flamethrower was effective in creating a massive blaze. I'm sure a lot of you know what that is, but I couldn't really picture it when I was reading this story about what a homemade flamethrower would entail. But Chief Kim Rainey explained it as the flamethrower, quote, basically consisting of 2 tanks, one which contained either oxygen or CO2, and the other smaller tank appeared to contain racing fuel. Once he mixed those two items, it would turn into a vapor or atomize. Once the shooting stopped, it appeared that he then retrieved the homemade device, activated it, and went through the house, basically releasing gas vapor inside, end quote. Thankfully, Katrina's injuries, while severe, were not fatal, and she survived. Another young girl that had been shot in the back also survived, and another victim was injured when she jumped from a second-story window trying to escape and broke her ankle. When the fire was finally put out and police could really assess the scene, it was revealed that 9 members of the Ortega family were left dead. These included Sylvia Ortega, age 43, her mother Alicia, age 70, her father Joseph, age 80, her 2 brothers, Charles, age 49, and James, age 51, and her sister Alicia, age 46. Charles' wife Sherry, age 45, and James' wife Teresa, age 52, were also killed, as was Alicia's 17-year-old son Michael. Sylvia and her parents, Alicia and Joseph, died from the gunshot wounds, while 4 others died from some combination of the fire and the gunshot wounds. 2 more, including Michael, died from the fire alone. Letitia lost her parents and all 4 siblings and had to watch her daughter fight for her life. Letitia has said, quote, "I lost my identity completely. I always used to tease them that I had 5 sets of parents. Everyone telling me what to do and how to do it. I can't even tell you how much I miss them." End quote. All in all, 13 children were left orphaned from this attack. The fire was so bad, it took the coroner a really long time to ID which body was which. By January 9th of the next year, only 6 had been conclusively identified. Sylvia, Michael, and James were the 3 remaining. After fleeing the Ortega home, Bruce changed his clothes and drove a rental car to his brother's house about 30 miles away. His brother was out at a Christmas party and was unaware that his brother was at his home. Around 3:30 a.m., Bruce shot himself. His brother returned home that night to find his brother dead in his home. He called the police, and they quickly found the connection to the Ortega family case. Police started to chain the events together, and it actually looked like maybe Bruce thought he was going to get away. Investigators found that he had booked a plane ticket from Los Angeles to Illinois. He had called a friend from Iowa and told him that he was coming to stay for a few weeks and he would be driving in from Illinois. Police were unsure if he genuinely intended to make this trip or if it was to throw off the investigation. Bruce also had $17,000 cling-wrapped to him. Apparently, he was not done with the brutality yet either. He had rigged his rental car to detonate, but luckily the police were able to deal with that without injury. He also had a longer kill list where he apparently intended to target more people, including his own mother and Sylvia's divorce attorney. The theory was that Bruce was planning on committing all these crimes and then running, but he sustained severe burns in the fire and decided he wouldn't be able to slip away unnoticed, so he ended his life. They found that the Santa suit had even melted to his arms. In any case, it was clear Bruce had been planning this attack for a while. He had ordered the Santa suit all the way back in September and had picked it up in November. He also was purchasing guns through October and November. At Bruce's home, police found even more guns and a tank of accelerant. It was described as, quote, "a virtual bomb factory," end quote, by investigators. In 2016, Oprah interviewed Letitia and she said, quote, "I can't do anything to change what happened. I can only focus on the future. This is what he's done. Enough. I'm not going to allow you to continue to consume us with your evilness. You don't want that anger to live within you day to day and grow, just like it did with this monster. Love is the most powerful energy. It is so strong, and when people come together with a lot of love, you really can't break that," end quote.
Our last discussion today is going to be about the Yazdanpanah family. I'm not quite sure if I'm saying that right, so if I'm not, I apologize. Many of you are probably familiar with this case, but some people say that this case also was an inspiration for the Santa character in season 2 of American Horror Story, along with Bruce Pardo. The Yazdanpanah family lived in Grapevine, a suburb of Dallas, Texas. Aziz Yazdanpanah was 56 years old, and he married a woman named Nazrin Ramadi, who was 55. They had been together for a long time and had 2 children named Nona and Ali. Nona was 19 and Ali was 14. Nona had recently graduated high school and was attending community college. Her dream was to become a lawyer, and she planned to make it the center of her college career. Nazrin had her own cosmetology license, but allegedly Aziz would not let her work. Nazrin was known to be much more laid back and understanding when being compared to Aziz. Allegedly, he put cameras around their home in order to watch the comings and goings of everyone who lived there. Nona's friends said that she would show up to school crying about how crazy her father was. He had a desire for control. He had to approve of everything Nona wore before she was allowed to leave the home, and he would randomly snatch her phone and go through her calls and her texts and her emails. He wasn't even secretive about it. He would just do it. Aziz also restricted Nona's dating life until she was at a certain age, and then he demanded that she only date within the same race and religion. Financial stability was a concern in the Yazdanpanah family. In 1996, Aziz got 3 years probation after pleading guilty to subscribing to a false income tax return. He was fined $1,000 and then another $30,000 for restitution. 3 years after that, Aziz and Nazrin filed for joint bankruptcy, but it was discharged. Aziz was unemployed, and he had been for a little bit, and he was also refusing to let Nazrin work with her cosmetology license, so there wasn't really a good source of income. In August 2010, Nazrin filed for bankruptcy again in hopes of pushing off a foreclosure that had been placed on their home. After 24 years of marriage, it was around this time that Nazrin separated from Aziz. She took their 2 children and moved into an apartment with the help of her brother, Ali Ramadi. Even though his family left, Aziz remained in their home. He maintained the yard, and the neighbors would recall seeing him during this time. They didn't really notice anything different or him acting strange in any sort of way. That is automatically a bad sign to me. Some people talk about this as if he didn't seem out of normal. He was being fine. He was level-minded, but I see his calmness as super intimidating. It kind of shows me that his demeanor was off, because no one would be calm after losing their wife of 24 years and his 2 children in the midst of, I think it's their 3rd bankruptcy file. So it's not a calming situation. On Christmas Eve in 2011, the Yazdanpanah and the Zarei families got together at a large ranch for a Christmas party. The Zarei family was related to Nazrin through a brother-in-law. The party went pretty late into the night, but some still had plans to regather in the morning for a Christmas morning. The following day, Christmas morning, 6 members of the family got together at Nazrin's apartment. These included Nazrin and her 2 children, Nona and Ali, as well as Nazrin's sister, Zohreh Ramadi, who was 58, and her husband, Mohammed Hossein Zari, who was 59, and their daughter, Sarah Fatima Zari, who was 22 at the time. Everyone was surprised when Aziz Yazdanpanah just showed up. He was uninvited, and he was dressed as Santa Claus. Aziz's niece, Sarah, sent a text to her friend around 11 o'clock in the morning saying, quote, "So we're here. We just got here, and my uncle is here too, dressed as Santa. Awesome," end quote. Another message was sent out from her phone 15 minutes later saying, quote, "Now he wants to be all fatherly and win Father of the Year," end quote. That would be the last text sent from Sarah's phone, and she had no idea that her life was about to end, along with all of those that she loved. All of a sudden, Aziz pulled out a 9mm and a .40 caliber gun. He shot all 6 members of his family multiple times, including his own children. At 11:35 a.m., there was a 911 call we will play for you now.
Grapevine 911, where is your emergency? Hello, Grapevine 911. You need help? Are you sick? What was that? Do you need an ambulance or police? Hello? One moment. I was getting heavy breathing on the phone, and I need someone to talk to me, so please send both.
In case you couldn't hear, the operator heard muffled breathing and the word "help" twice before the line went dead after about 20 seconds. After further analysis by the police, they can also hear Aziz saying in the back, quote, "I am shooting people," End quote. Initially, this wasn't heard by the operator because of the heavy breathing, and obviously she was trying to punch in a lot of information and get the person to talk to her, so it got bypassed initially, but they did hear this later and believe it to be Aziz. After this phone call, Aziz shot himself as well. The police arrived at the crime scene about 3 minutes after the call to find everyone dead. Aziz had shot both of his children, niece, and sister-in-law multiple times in the head. I can't imagine anyone killing their own child, much less shooting them multiple times in the head. It was overkill, and it was purely a death shot from the get-go. In comparison, Nazrin, his wife, was only shot once in the head, and his brother-in-law was shot multiple times in the head, chest, and stomach. It also appeared that Aziz tried to frame his brother-in-law as being involved because he had placed one of the guns in his hand. This would have been unsuccessful anyway because Mohammed had been shot multiple times by both of the weapons. As for a motive, it is believed that Aziz was upset that his wife was doing okay without him, as well as his financial difficulties. The Grapevine PD remained silent on their beliefs of the motive. There were so many factors at play that one can't be sure. People who knew the family could tell that there was tension, but they never thought it would result in the death of the family. This is why I think you should report anything anytime you have some off feeling. You know that at least some of the friends at school knew how rough it was at home, and I'm sure that other family members knew the extent of Nazrin's relationship with Aziz. Not to mention that Nazrin's friend made the statement that Nazrin was not allowed to work because of Aziz's orders. That alone is enough to raise concern because that is manipulation and psychological abuse. And those are only from the few accounts that we know about. That's not including the people who saw or heard or knew things that didn't report anything. If someone would have stepped forward and said something or reported the behavior, this massacre could have possibly been prevented. There is also some speculation that the motive was caused by Aziz's hatred towards his daughter dating someone not in the same religion as them. This hasn't been confirmed that she was really even dating anybody that we were able to find, so we can't really substantiate that. And also some of the ways that people talked about it, it sounded a little like Islamophobia, so we just have to make sure that we create those boundaries of knowing what really happened and keeping to the facts.
So enjoy the holiday season full of cheer and joy, but don't let your guard down.
Merry Christmas! With like your music or something, you know? Mm-hmm. I think that'd be cool.
Meh. New woman.
Thinking of like those elf songs.
Yeah.
Where they're like, you know? So, where's Hallie?
Hallie, where's the food table?
Where's the food table? I can't find Hallie.
Yeah, she had like lighter hair. Scandalous. Scandalous. Scandalous.
Our neighbor got a new boo and a new dog.